Hello, my name is Anne. I'm a speculative writer. I write romance and horror, so I am here for a vlog. This is a vlog time. But I wanted to kind of like introduce what I'm going to be doing. So this is for draft 3 of Project Underground. So I wrote this sometime in 2021, maybe 2022. I don't know. But I started writing it sometime like 2 years ago, probably. Yeah, and then I edited it. I edited it this, oh my gosh. But I edited it earlier this year, and I sent it to my mom and my dad and my friend, and they gave me a bunch of feedback, which was super helpful. The main feedback that I got from them was there was a lack of clarity in a lot of it. There was a lack of clarity in the world building. There was a lack of clarity just like placing you inside of the world. Like my mom said that she was kind of confused at the beginning of every chapter, and then when she got partway through it, it was like, oh, she understood where she was in the world, which is obviously non-ideal. But the main goal of this edit is to go through and just make everything super clear, and that's primarily line edits. So maybe there will be new stuff, maybe there will be less stuff, but the main goal of this draft 3 is clarity. Make sure that it's understandable where people are, what they're doing, how they're doing it. I can keep all my fun, fanciful language, but I need to make sure that the fanciful, fun stuff is like grounded in reality, which I think is what it's missing. I suspect that this issue is actually an issue that's only in the first act. I imagine that as soon as we get to like the beginning of the second act, it kind of goes away, because I remember very clearly explaining those sort of like outer areas, because I was like, it's hard for me when I start writing characters, like I'm in their heads, you know what I mean? It's like, it's hard for me to want to explain things that they already know. You know, which obviously like you kind of have to explain it to the readers. You're not just writing, you're not just living in the character, right? So I have to go back and make sure it's understandable for people outside of this, which is a very useful thing to have realized in this project, because that means I can take it forward with my other projects. And it's actually in my horror that I started drafting. I noticed I'm better at dealing with these clarity issues than I will like I'm fixing them before I get to the editing stage, which is really nice. So that's fun, and I'm gonna be going through this and editing it, and exciting. Draft 3, we're here. It's actually very strange how different editing a draft 2 versus a draft 1 is. My rough draft for Project Witch was very rough. And editing it, I had a lot of new scenes. I had a lot of like full rewrites of scenes. There were a lot of changes, a lot of differences that needed to be happening, a lot of clarification of the emotional arc and the story arc. And so there was a big overhaul of like Project Witch, which I did add 7,000 words to it, and it was only a 13,000 word project. But going in and working on draft 3 of this book is actually kind of crazy. It's very fun. The writing is just like a lot better, just because like it's a draft 2. Like I'm editing a draft 2 instead of like my very first draft. So it's a lot more fun to read. There's a lot more fun turns of phrases. A lot of the characters are a lot more like, you know, they're a lot more solid. You can see them a lot more clearly. And yeah, it's really fun. Like there are parts that I do need to do big edits to, because they were first draft like writing in the draft 2, because I wrote new scenes, I wrote a new chapter and everything. Even then, it's like it's a lot more straightforward in a lot of ways. So that's very exciting. And for an update about where I am exactly is I finished chapter 1. I edited chapter 1, which is actually the longest chapter in the entire book. So I finished that, and now I'm on chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a larger edit. Well, these chapters, the beginning chapters are just larger edits. So I think it's going to take me a while to get through this first half of the book, and then once I get to the second half, it's going to be a lot faster. So I imagine I'm going to spend most of this month and like probably part of next month working on the first half of this book, and then I might just like run through the last half. I think the last half is going to be easier, but we'll see. But it's really useful to do it this way. This is actually the first time I'm not rewriting it, so I can actually go and do like fix the typos and stuff. I found like a grammar issue which I was like staring at that sentence and I was like, this doesn't make sense. But why doesn't it make sense? And then I realized that like the noun that it was running off of made no sense. It was like the sentence was, what I thought it was saying was like the robot slams its arm. What it was actually saying was its head slams its arm. Like, so I would have changed that, which is so funny, but I fixed that up and hopefully we can make it really nice. I'm hoping it can be really nice. I'm really hoping. But anyways, I will update you when I get a little bit farther in this, maybe later tonight. Maybe I will at least update you once I actually get finished with it, because then I get new ink. I'm so excited. Okay, anyways, I should give my dog back her toy because she really wants to chew it. She's like, whenever I start talking, she gets really excited and she's like, I want to play, because we're having fun. She's been staring at me. She's been staring at this thing this entire time we've been chatting. She's so cute. Anyways, I'll see you later. Okay, bye. But hello, I'm back. This is an update. It's like a couple of days later, but updates. I finished chapter 2, which is really exciting. I always love like finishing. I love editing. There's so many reasons I love editing, but one of the reasons I really enjoy it is I love the feeling of things getting better. Look at the little Winnie, by the way. She's so cute. But I'm on chapter 3. I've only just started it. I have noticed that like I kind of stopped when I got to this one portion of it, which I'm like, yeah, I need to rewrite that entire section right now because it doesn't read well. But I'm noticing with the third draft that a lot of my edits are more like, this sounds musical and pretty, but it doesn't get across what I want it to get across, or it's a bit confusing in how it's trying to get it across. So I end up getting rid of a whole bunch and then just like making something that's slightly different, or like making tweaks so that it reads a bit better. I am getting kind of worried that I'm not making like, I think this is just me being a bit like over anxious in general, but I'm worried I'm not making enough changes. Like, I feel like I need to do another like developmental edit. There are a few things that I would I'm not sure if I need, but part of me wants to add them. Like, I want to add more scenes with the main characters and kind of their progression of their relationship. I want to add more scenes with the friends. I want to just like add a bunch of stuff. But I think I need to finish this one, which is genuinely just for clarity. They'll send it to people. But I also think, but yeah, after I'm done with this edit, I'm probably going to print it out and then bind it. Once I bind it, I find it's a lot easier to read it as like an actual book. As someone who is a lover of shiny and sparkly things, all of my favorite like action scenes, they all are the ones that like have like this emotional like core to them. I cry at action so much, especially like showed action. Oh my goodness. But I think that's why I love it, and that's where like a lot of my inspiration for like action in general comes in. Like, that's what I want to replicate, that sort of like heavy intertwining of like emotion and action. What I think is really powerful about action scenes is you can turn the emotion that's internal into like an external thing and really have those like intertwine in this really beautiful way. Yeah, just thinking things. I'm gonna stop rambling now because it has been kind of a ridiculous amount of time since I started rambling. I love trying new things because sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But if they work, they're just wonderful, and I love that stuff. I love things that work. So we'll see what happens. I will see you in a couple days probably. I feel the need to be a bit quieter than usual, so hopefully it's not that bad, but you never know. But I finished chapter 3, and I kind of got to a point when I was writing it or editing it where I was just like, I don't know if I like it. So for context, chapter 3 is a new chapter that I added in the second draft. So it's like one of the few like first draft portions of this book still that like feels like a first draft, and when you read it, it looks like a first draft. I remember my mom was telling me one of the things that she found like an issue with, and she was like, you know, this like antagonistic character doesn't really seem to have like a big presence in the book. And I was like, that's literally why I added chapter 3. And I was like kind of confused by it, but I was like, I don't think it really matters that much. And now that I'm reading chapter 3, I'm like, no wonder she felt that way. Because I wrote it, I was like, okay, this antagonistic character has like a much bigger presence in the book solely because of chapter 3, and it gives you context for things that happen later, right? But if chapter 3 was just kind of like, it wasn't clear exactly what was happening or what was going on, and I think it's better now. But unfortunately, I don't think it's like... It feels weird. There's something really off about it. I think it's a chapter I'm gonna have to go and like retype fully. Like, no, just taking my current progress and then like adding the changes I've made. I think I'm gonna have to go through and actually make like retype the whole thing so I can make changes as I'm typing it up too, to get like another layer of editing. One thing I noticed with it is that the voice of it feels a little off. Like, and I don't think it is. I don't know. It feels a lot like the voice of my horror. It's not quite the same. My horror book is a lot more internal. There's a lot more like thought processes happening there, whereas this is definitely not, mainly because the main character is not willing to directly look at this thing. She doesn't want to like acknowledge it, let alone interact with it directly, so she's a lot more separate from it. So it's very different in that sense. Like, she doesn't even want to think about it. She's just like, oh no, this terrible thing is happening. Let's just pretend nothing's happening. Nothing's going on, right? I do think it's gonna need a bit more fiddling with, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So, hello, it's me again. I've returned. So I have an important update. So I know my plan was to basically do one chapter and then open up like a new fun like open up one of the inks from the advent calendar, but I've realized that's actually making me kind of less productive. Because of this, like every time I finish a chapter, it's like, oh, let's get up and get that thing. So I've kind of cut myself off of that. I always had a suspicion that opening them up so often, like every chapter, was gonna backfire on me. That's where we're at right now. So it's good, right? It's good to know. But regardless, I'm on chapter 6 now, which is exciting. I'm excited to get to, let's see, I can't remember, like the last 2 chapters were pretty easy to edit. There were like some small changes, some small clarifications, but I think they're good. It's so hard to tell. I'm kind of basing this off of the fact that all of the questions my family kind of had for this novel at this point, none of it was about this part, and maybe that's just because they didn't understand it well enough to like have problems with it. But reading it back, I think it's fine. I added some like spatial stuff, which I find is a lot of what I really need, is the spatial stuff to just be like, oh, here is the stuff. You know, so I think that's good. But I'm very pleased. I'm on chapter 6. I've printed out 11 chapters. My printer is almost out, which is such a shame, but it's such a part of life. Let's see, I don't actually remember. I don't feel like I've been making huge changes. One of my favorite things to do with like swapping POV in scenes is to have the last line of a previous scene, especially when the scenes are like, the 2 characters are disconnected, is I love having the last line of a scene connect to the first line of the scene in the other character's POV. Not always possible, but when it is possible, it's very fun. So I also haven't typed any of this up, so I have like almost 40 pages, which I still need to type up. But that's okay. We'll be doing that. I don't really feel like dealing with that because I know for chapter 3 I'm going to want to rewrite it completely. So that's going to be a bit of a test, right? That's going to be a bit of a job. But that's what we're going to be doing. Well, you know, my goal today, I don't have a huge amount of time today. I probably only have like a couple of hours to actually write. So we'll see. I'm probably not going to have a huge amount of time to edit today. But I'll definitely be able to edit tomorrow. So I'll see you tomorrow with updates because I will definitely freaking finish this tomorrow. Hello. But I wanted to give an update. I've started working on chapter 6 and it's rougher than I expected, but I think a lot of these early chapters are going to be a bit rougher than I expected. So I'm going through and I'm editing them, and I really hope when I send this to my mom again, I hope she can see like the improvements. I hope it's better than it was when I last sent it to her because she was very unimpressed with the start. After the first edit, the start was so much better than like it started as, than like the first draft. And so I was like seeing it through that lens, and it's so much better than the first draft because by this point in reading the first draft, I was like so annoyed with the entirety of the story. I was annoyed with the characters, I was annoyed with like the world building, I was annoyed with the like writing, and the pacing was just so off. It was just really weird and it wasn't like cohesive. Second draft is much better in the beginning, but it is like still the rougher version. It's rougher than the second half of the book. So I am hoping that once I send this to my mom that she'll notice it and be like, "Ooh, you fixed so many things," and I'll be like, "Yes." One thing I find really interesting, it's also crazy because she was telling me that like the start of the chapters she didn't like very much. It was hard for her to get into, but then by the time she reached the end of the chapter, she really was enjoying it. And I'm finding that when it comes to editing the chapters, I edit the front part of the chapter way more than I edit the second half. Like, she gave me a lot of really good like big picture feedback, which I really appreciate. It's just fun to like go through it and be like, oh, I see what she was talking about here, I understand now. So that's awesome. It's taking me a while to get through. It is another one of those chapters that's very new. There are huge swaths of this that I completely got rid of and I rewrote in a different way to like make it kind of more dynamic. Yeah, I wanted it to hit a bit better with the backstory of the characters, and so it got a huge rework. And so I'm finding there's a lot of stuff to change, a lot of differences, but it's gonna take me a bit longer. So I didn't complete my 2 chapters the way that I was hoping, but that's fine. I'd much rather the story end up being better on the other side of the third draft than like push through it, you know? But that's pretty much all I really wanted to update you for this vlog. But I hope you had a great time. I hope that you enjoyed it, and maybe I'll see you again. But have a great rest of your week.